What's up, guys? We're back with more picks and predictions. This weekend on October 26th, we got Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria for the featherweight strap in Abu Dhabi. I'm going to break down every single fight on this card, give you my picks and predictions, and how I think every single fight's going to go. Let's quickly hop into a recap for UFC Vegas 99. We had another profitable week last week, and then we'll jump into the picks and predictions. All right, so UFC Vegas 99 was another profitable card for us. We had 2.07 units in profit, net profit that is, for last weekend. The two bets we missed were Michel Pereira's money line. I'm pretty disappointed in that bet. He actually looked like absolute trash. So yeah, he has 20 seconds of cardio and then he's done. I probably should have thought of that earlier. It was all those early finishes that kind of got me kind of seduced when it comes to Michel Pereira. But, Fluffy looked great. Good on him. Lost that bet half a unit at plus 130. We did catch him earlier on in the week. And then Elise Reed money line and Kyler Phillips money line. That was a two-leg parlay. We had 1 unit on that and that lost. Kyler Phillips, I don't really know what happened with him. He looked like great in round 1, and then he just looked absolutely gassed by the end of round 1, which is interesting because he was kind of just sitting on top. So I don't know how he gassed out in round 1, and then going on in rounds 2 and 3, he just looked like he had nothing left in the tank, and Rafael just picked it up and just really put it on him on the feet. So that parlay lost as a 2-leg. Elise Reed did hit, but then obviously Kyler Phillips lost. So 1 unit down on that. And then we had 4 bets that did hit. So we went 4 for 6 overall. Darren Elkins money line, 0.75 units on that. Cashed in as an underdog. Caught him at plus 105 earlier on in the week. We had Melissa Martinez's money line. Only 0.25 units on that at minus 130. That one hit. We had a 2-leg with Jean Matsumoto and Asu Almabayev. That was our biggest bet of the night at 1.5 units. Mostly because, those were close fights. The Matsumoto one, I think, was very close, and the Asu one was also decently close, but he obviously won 2 out of those 3 rounds. And yeah, that was our biggest bet. I thought those were the 2 best prospects on the card, the people coming up with like the most momentum. So yeah, Jean Matsumoto, Asu Almabayev, that 2-leg hit. Charles Johnson moneyline hit, and then I parlayed that with the Elise Reed, Jessica Penne over 2.5 rounds, which the overs on the girls' fights, those hit like a lot of the time. So that one hit as well, 1 unit on that. Total overall, we had 5 units in. 7.07 units out, the 2.07 units in net profit. And yeah, if you ever want to check out our premium, check out kopicks.win. It's $20 a month. If you sign up, you can see right when we catch our bets. So if you saw like Darren Elkins later on in the week at like maybe minus 102 or something like that, we post it when we bet it. Those are the odds we catch it at. So yeah, if you want to check out our premium bets, kopicks.win is $20 a month. And yeah, let's jump right into the picks and predictions for UFC 308. All right, so to kick off the card, we have Ismail Naurdiev. I don't know if I'm saying that name right, but we have Ismail versus Bruno Silva. And they love giving Bruno Silva the first fight on these Abu Dhabi cards. I think he was the first fight on last year's Abu Dhabi card against Shara in Shara's UFC debut. So, yeah, this is an interesting fight. I'm going to preface this by saying there's no bet here. Ishmael opened as an underdog. I think at that point there was a bet. But Ishmael is now minus 170 and Bruno is plus 142. This is like insane odds on Ismail if you ask me. Now, Ismail was in the UFC before. He got dropped and then he came back. Now he's making his return to the UFC. He wasn't on a tear or anything in the regional scene either. If you go check his Tapology, he's like 4-3 in his last like 7 fights since he left the UFC. So he's coming off 2 actually. He's coming off a win against Tahir Habdi, but 2 losses in a row before that, an armbar and a knockout. That's on the regional scene. So Ishmael's not this like world beater, but then again, Bruno Silva hasn't looked good. He's on a 3-fight losing streak to Brendan Allen, Shara, and then Chris Weidman. And that Weidman match obviously got eye poked a bunch, but he was kind of losing the fight up until the eye pokes. And I don't know. With Bruno Silva, he's kind of a busted prospect. He is also older now. Ishmael's going to be the younger fighter in this fight. This is a really hard fight to pick. Both these guys are just kind of mid. I think Ismail overall, just as a mixed martial artist, just puts it together a little bit better. So I'm going to lean Ismail as my pick, but I'm not confident at all, especially the wider that Ismail's line goes. I think he opened as a dog. Now he's minus 170. The wider that line gets, the more that the value probably lies in Bruno Silva. So if you're looking at how to bet this fight, I don't think you really do bet this fight. I know those EV endings in the last name at Abu Dhabi do really well, so that's going to be one thing that's going to be tempting to put Ismail in parlays and stuff, but I'm going to pick Ismail to win this fight. I think he puts together a little bit better. He's a younger fighter. We've seen Bruno Silva do kind of stupid things in fights, IQ-wise, so, we're going to lean Ismail, but at the end of the day, this fight is super close. Ismail is not proven like people might think he is. He's not making this like crazy UFC debut. He was in the UFC before. He hasn't been on a tear in the regional scene either. So Ismail is not like this like next level prospect. And then on the Bruno side, we know what Bruno is. Bruno's losses The Chris Weidman loss is kind of trash, but the Shara loss, we're all pretty high on Shara, and the Brendan Allen loss. Brendan Allen is really good, so I mean, I don't really know how to break this fight down aside from that. Don't really bet on this fight. I'm going to pick Ismail to win, but very scared about how this fight is going to go down. All right, so next fight on the card, we have Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal. Now, I'm going to go with Rinat Fakhretdinov to win this fight. I think overall, when it comes to the striking, Carlos Leal has some real power. He is 21-5, and he has a bunch of experience in MMA, not in the UFC. Obviously, this is his UFC debut. But he was in camp, so it is short notice, but he was in camp, meant to fight on October 22nd. And then obviously Rinat Fakhretdinov was supposed to fight Nursultan Ruziboyev. Ruziboyev pulled out of the fight, so now Carlos Leal is his replacement opponent. And so Leal has been in camp, is basically what I'm trying to say. He is dangerous. He has power. He does carry that power throughout the fight. So that is something to look out for. But I think at the end of the day, Rinat does have the takedowns and the wrestling. And on the other hand, Carlos Leal can get taken down. So I think that's what it is. It comes down to leading on wrestling in this fight. I also think in Abu Dhabi, if this scorecards is close, I think they'll lean Rinat. That kind of happened against Nicholas Dalby in Riyadh earlier this year. So in Abu Dhabi, I think that, scorecards will lean Rinat if it is close. He is the better wrestler. He does have the wrestling game there. The one issue, so the two real issues in this fight for Rinat are, one, Carlos Leal does have good power, especially early on. So early on getting knocked out, that is a path to victory for Carlos Leal. And then the other one is the fact that we've seen Rinat gas before. So if he gasses out later on in this fight and then Carlos kind of picks up the pace, that is obviously something to worry about. But aside from that, Rinat's going to be the pick, and let's move on to the next one. All right, so the next fight on the card is Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. Now, this breakdown is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to pick Farid Basharat to win this fight. Mostly because, we know he's going to come with the high-pressure wrestling, and his striking is pretty decent at the same time. Also, like I said before many times, when you have the wrestling threat, the striking really opens up for the fighter. So I'm going to pick Farid Basharat to win this fight, but these odds at minus 500 I think are pretty insane for Farid. I would not parlay him with anything this weekend. Victor Hugo is pretty live. He's got power in his hands. He has submissions. He has good takedown defense as well. So, Farid's going to have to work for the takedowns, but I think he will be able to get them against Victor. And I think a lot of this is just going to be kind of like a boring, really clinch and chain wrestling type of fight from Farid, which is what he's going to need to do to get the win. But betting the Basharat bros at minus 500 in 2024 is not really a play. I think, if anything, the value on the betting side here is in Victor Hugo because he's such a dog and he's just live everywhere this fight goes. But at the end of the day, I think Basharat is going to be able to get it done. I'll actually give you guys a little bit of look into our premium. I do have a little bet on this fight on the Victor Hugo side. It's Hugo to win inside the distance, and if there's a decision, no action. I think that's kind of like a free play. If Hugo does catch him, if this fight does end in a finish, it's going to be on the Hugo side. Farid Basharat is not going to finish Victor Hugo. He's just going to ride out a 3-round decision here if he does get the win, which I think he will do. But, if you want to place that bet, it's available on BetOnline. It probably will be available on DraftKings throughout the week. And it's kind of just like a free bet in my eyes because, if there's a finish, it's on the Hugo side. And if, there is no finish, it just voids it, the bet gets pushed. And it's plus 400 right now. So that's pretty good value. That's something to look into. And yeah, let's move on to the next one. All right, now up the card, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Chris Barnett. Now, this is going to be pretty fucking, I don't know. I don't really know how to break down this fight. I want to pick Chris Barnett because, we all love Chris Barnett. And he's been going through a bunch of personal problems. He was supposed to fight, and then the hurricane hit, and he couldn't fight last week. And now he's fighting Kennedy Nzechukwu. So, we know Kennedy Nzechukwu is a more talented fighter in this matchup. He's also a pure light heavyweight, naturally. So, moving up to heavyweight to fight Chris Barnett, he's going to have the skill, the light heavyweight skill coming to the heavyweight matchup, which is always good. Reach-wise, he has an 83-inch reach. Barnett's going to have to really push up and close that distance throughout this fight. Now, the one shitty thing about Kennedy Nzechukwu is we know that this guy can sometimes just give up or just not be high volume enough to win the fight. He was a big favorite against OSP and lost to OSP. So I would definitely not bet Kennedy Nzechukwu at the current odds he's at. I don't think you bet this fight at all. I think it's similar to the last fight where if there's value, it's probably on the other side. But, you can't pick the dog. Kennedy Nzechukwu is definitely the better fighter in this matchup. So it's hard for me to go and pick Chris Barnett to get the win. But all I'm saying is Chris Barnett does have that dog mentality. He is going to push up and just be in Kennedy Nzechukwu's face. throw haymakers, and he could definitely catch him. He is much bigger than him. Like I said, Kennedy is a pure light heavyweight, and Chris Barnett is the actual natural heavyweight in this matchup. So Kennedy's going to be the pick, but once again, these odds are too skewed. I would definitely not put any money down on this fight. All right, up the card, we have Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. Now, this is a pretty interesting fight to break down. Bruno Ferreira is obviously looking great. He's been on a tear. He has that one loss to Nursultan Ruziboyev recently, but aside from that, if you look at his topology, you're going to see round one finish, round one finish, round one finish, like back to back to back to back to back round one finishes. He's really dangerous early on in fights, and I think he's only seen the second round a handful of times in his career. I think only twice in his career. So yeah, obviously Bruno Ferreira, very dangerous opponent, like skilled finisher. But I'm actually gonna go with Abus Magomedov to win this fight. I think similarly to how Nursultan Ruziboyev had a really long reach advantage, he was a lot lengthier, a lot rangier than Bruno Ferreira. Abus Magomedov is the same, and Abus Magomedov obviously has some losses, but those are some really high quality losses, like Sean Strickland, Kyle Barallo. These are people that are at the top of the division in the rankings. So, those are, like I said, pretty high quality losses. And I think at the end of the day, Abus Magomedov does have really crisp striking. He's going to be able to keep Bruno Ferreira at range, which is what he's going to want to do. He has the reach advantage, 78 inches to 72 inches on the reach. So he does have a sizable reach advantage here. And I think at the end of the day, he can also lean on wrestling. I think when it comes to just maybe pure jiu-jitsu, Bruno Ferreira might be more dangerous. But overall grappling in MMA, Abus Magomedov can lean on the wrestling in this fight. When it comes to the striking, he is cleaner. The only thing he doesn't have is maybe the danger aspect that Bruno Ferreira has, but also that danger aspect really will last the first round. Then I think Bruno Ferreira won't carry the power as deep into the fight. So, a dangerous round one, but I'm going to go with Abus. I think he's going to be able to slow the fight down and take over at least later on. Probably get it done by decision unless Bruno Ferreira gasses out really hard in the third round and Abus finds a finish. But I think he leans on the wrestling. He leans on the technical, rangy striking and gets it done probably by decision this weekend. All right, now, next fight on the card, we have Myktybek Orolbai versus Mateusz Rebecki. This is a pretty fun fight, fun matchup. I think it's one of the better matchups on the card. We have Myktybek Orolbai at minus 200 or so, like a moderate favorite, and I kind of really like him in this spot currently. Mateusz Rebecki in his last fight against Diego Ferreira, I mean, he was looking great before that, but he just gassed out super hard, got finished in the third round in that fight, and, just the gas tank issues are just going to be a problem for him against someone like Orolbai. Orolbai just has really good wrestling. He can, hang around in the stand-up for long enough, has pretty good entries, pretty good takedowns, and he is just super durable as well. He fought Elvis Brenner in his last fight, and Elvis Brenner is one of those opponents that's just going to leave it all out there, empty the entire tank, and just put you in as many dangerous spots as possible. And, Orolbai handled Elvis Brenner really well. So when it comes to someone like Rebecki that's going to come out early, especially in round one, throw bombs, throw some haymakers, stuff with some real power, and then, just really try to get you out of there in the first round. I don't think Orolbai is the person that he's going to do that to. And then when it comes to later rounds in this fight, I think Orolbai definitely takes over. So I think it's a pretty interesting matchup. Both of them are really high level on the ground. And then when it comes to striking, Orolbai is probably more technical. Rebecki throws wild, but throws with a bunch more power, a lot more intent. So take that as you will. I'm going to go with Orolbai. I think he'll definitely be able to get this one done, especially because of the cardio issues with Rebecki. All right, now, next fight on the card, we have Geoff Neal versus Rafael dos Anjos. Now, Rafael dos Anjos is 40 going into this matchup, and he's on a 2-fight losing streak, similar with Geoff Neal. Both these guys are obviously fighting high-level opponents in their division since they've been at the top for quite a while. Geoff Neal's last 2 losses with Ian Gary, which was a split decision loss, and he actually did put in some good work on Ian Gary, and then before that, Shavkat finished him with a rear naked choke. And, Shavkat's fighting for the belt now, undefeated. So that's obviously not a bad loss. And then on the Rafael dos Anjos side, he lost to Mateusz Gamrot, where he dropped Mateusz Gamrot, but then Gamrot did his pressure, chain wrestling style, and ended up beating RDA in that fight. And then before that, he lost to Vicente Luque, which, that loss is not aging too well because Luque's looked pretty terrible as of late, but that was about a year ago. So yeah, both these guys coming on this 2 loss streaks going into this fight. And the thing is, I'm going to go with Geoff Neal to win. I think RDA is not going to be able to take Geoff Neal down in this fight. Geoff Neal does have pretty good takedown defense. And then on the other hand, this is probably going to be a lot of boxing in this fight. And I think when it comes to the hands, Geoff Neal is just much better than RDA. He also has a reach advantage. He has 75 inches of reach to RDA's 70. So he has that 5-inch reach advantage as well. I don't think RDA is going to be able to take him down. So I'm going to lean Geoff Neal in this fight. But, you got to love fighters like RDA They're 40 years old, still kicking around, still performing at a pretty high level. And yeah, I'll lean Geoff Neal. But, you never know. I mean, with guys like this, RD can just show up and just be on his absolute A game. But for what I see, I think Geoff Neal keeps it standing and gets it done on the feet. All right, so next fight on the card, we have Aslan versus Rafael. And I'm not going to try to pronounce this guy's last name because I'm going to fuck it up for sure. But versus Rafael, we're going to go with that. Ebo's 13-1. Rafael's 11-0, making his debut to the UFC. Undefeated. Now, he has 10 stoppages. And this is a very interesting fight to break down. Now, we know what Ebo is. Ebo is a brawler with a shit gas tank. He's going to come in there, be dangerous for a round. He's going to swing wild, swing heavy, swing with intent, trying to take your head off. And, Rafael is not the most technical striker either. He is pretty good on the feet. And I don't really know where the advantage lies on the ground. I think on the ground, if it does go there, I'll give it to Rafael. Slightly, maybe. And, as these odds fluctuate, Rafael is flipped to the favorite. He opened as the underdog. He's now the minus 120 betting favorite, and Ebo is actually the underdog in this fight, the one with the UFC experience, but that UFC experience isn't too great. He had a loss to Anton Turkali, who was just absolutely trash. Then he fought him again, and he beat him, but none of the issues that lie with Aslan actually got fixed in that fight. He still looked like he was gassing out. So this is a really hard fight to predict, in my opinion. I think that... Now, I know Rafael trains with... what's that heavyweight's name? He trains with, I think one of the heavyweights does talk really highly about Rafael in the UFC. I gotta freaking search this shit up. But, Gelton Almeida. That's who it is. Yeah. So, Rafael trains with Gelton Almeida. And Gelton Almeida does talk pretty good about Rafael, which is interesting, I think. Also, the line movement is also interesting with Rafael flipping to a favorite. Kind of confused as to why that's happening. I'm going to go with Aslan. No, I'm not, actually. I'm going to go with Rafael. I'm going to go with Rafael to win this fight. Now, here's why. I feel like this is like a fight you definitely stay the fuck away from, like, completely. I think that Rafael is just not... He's going to keep his hands a little bit lower than Ebo. This is just going to be a fire fight to see who kind of, like, wings the punch. And the one thing is I know that Ebo will gas. I don't know that Rafael will gas, but I know that Ebo will gas, which is why I'm going to lean Rafael in this fight, because obviously when your fighter starts gassing and you have a bet on him, that's like the worst, because there's like almost nothing you can do to come back from that. So I'm going to pick Rafael, but this is a very sketchy fight. I would not bet on this fight. And yeah, we'll move on. Super sketchy. I would stay away from this money-wise. All right, now for our next fight, we have the main card opener. We have Shara Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. Now, I'm going to go with Shara Magomedov to win this fight. I think it's a very simple breakdown here. We know Armen is a pretty solid technical kickboxer, probably more technical and more solid kickboxer than Shara Magomedov himself. And then he has some level of wrestling to lean on that Shara does not in this fight. But at the end of the day, I don't see Armen having like this wrestle-heavy game plan and taking Shara down a bunch of times. I really just don't see that happening. I also think Shara does have decent takedown defense. He can hop his way back to the fence if one of his kicks get caught or something like that, and he's shown to do that. So I'm not really worried on the grappling side when it comes to this matchup. I think it's going to be a mainly striking matchup, and you can say what you want about Armen Petrosyan, saying he's a better kickboxer. He might be the better overall MMA striker than Shara, at least from what we've seen in the past. But I still think Shara wins this fight. I think the main advantage Shara has coming into this matchup is speed. He obviously, we know that he spams kicks as well. He's going to be dancing on the outside, spamming kicks on Armen, moving around, point fighting his way up into this 3-round fight. And I think that the speed advantage is going to just be too much for Armen to win this. If Shara really stays kind of, complacent, obviously Armen can start piecing him up, but I like the way Shara moves. He just moves around a lot, circles the octagon a lot, throws a bunch of kicks. I think he's going to outpoint Armen in what's going to be a majority striking match. If he's probably going to get caught by Armen a few times throughout the fight, but he's just going to be landing way more, throwing more volume that the judges have to swing it his way. It's also in Abu Dhabi, so the judges will probably swing it his way anyways. But I think in general, in a striking match, Shara's going to have more output. So unless Armen's throwing bombs that are hitting with just like much more power, was just really hard to do on someone like Shara to throw these bombs because he's just moving around so much. So when you do catch him, it's with these slick, quick shots, which Armen will probably do a couple times throughout the fight. But in general, I don't think he's catching Shara with these big bombs that's going to make him wobble. And he will land, but Shara will just simply land more. And that's the breakdown for this fight. So I'm going to pick Shara. Let's move on to the next one. All right, now next fight on the card, we have Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Now, obviously, we all love Dan Ige after UFC 303. Super badass thing he did. Took up a fight with Diego Lopez on like a 1 hour notice to keep that fight alive for that card. So, shout out to Dan Ige. That was a pretty badass thing to do. But when it comes to this fight, UFC didn't do him no favors. Gave him Lerone Murphy, 14-0, undefeated, blazing hot prospect. Just coming off a 5-round win on Edson Barbosa. And I think Lerone Murphy definitely gets this done this weekend. I actually love the line of Lerone Murphy by points. Danny Gay is super tough. I don't see him getting finished. Lerone Murphy went 5 rounds with a really beat up Edson Barbosa. Didn't really overdo anything for a finish. So I think in a 3-round fight, definitely think Lerone Murphy beats Danny Gay, but probably rides it out to a decision. Now, Lerone Murphy does have pretty sound grappling. Maybe Danny Gay can do some stuff on the ground, but I think Lerone Murphy does have sound enough grappling to kind of hold off any attacks from Dan when it comes on that side. And then when it comes to striking, Lerone Murphy's super clean. We saw him outstrike Edson Barbosa, and Barbosa still has, his speed going there for him. So, Lerone Murphy didn't really have any problems against Edson Barbosa on the feet. I don't see him having problems against Dan Ige on the feet. And, when you look at Dan Ige's losses, he seems to lose to, like, that top 10 in the featherweight division. He seems to definitely beat everyone else. He's a really solid gatekeeper, but, he's lost to Movzar, Josh Emmett, Korean Zombie, Bryce Mitchell, Diego Lopez. These are all people that kind of just belong in that high ranks of the featherweight division. Maybe not Bryce Mitchell, but Bryce Mitchell was pretty good, at least at that time. After that, Josh Emmett knockout is kind of crazy for Bryce Mitchell. But yeah, like I said, Dan Ige does seem to lose to these like top 10 ranked fighters in the featherweight division, and I think Lerone Murphy definitely belongs in that. Lerone Murphy looked just way too good against Edson Barbosa, and yeah, I think a lot of the fights stay standing. I think Murphy is too clean on the feet. I think when it comes to the grappling, it's pretty even. So I'm going to give Murphy the nod. I definitely think he gets done, and, I think by points is a pretty good play here. All right, now, next fight on the card, we have Magomedov Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. I'm going to go with Magomedov Ankalaev to beat Alexander Rakic this weekend at UFC 308. And to be honest, I just think Ankalaev is a better fighter than Rakic. Now, I thought Rakic would beat Yuri. I actually bet on Rakic to beat Yuri, and he did great in the first round, but then, Yuri just kind of said, fuck all the technique, fuck this. Why am I, trying to out-technique Alexander Rakic? I'm just going to go in, eat a few shots, and just start throwing haymakers. And, Rakic is a little bit chinny, so Rakic ended up getting knocked out by Yuri. I think that Magomed Ankalaev is better than Yuri as well. I definitely think that, Ankalaev can land on Rakic on the feet. When it comes to the wrestling, that's also in Ankalaev's back pocket. And I don't know what this narrative of Ankalaev being this fucking heavy pressure wrestler is, because that's just not what he is. He averages 1 takedown a fight. He doesn't actually wrestle as often as people might think. I think people might just look at his last name and what he looks like and be like, oh yeah, this guy's just going to wrestle the fuck out of Rakic. But I actually think he wins this fight on the feet, matter of fact. If he does want to wrestle, it is in his back pocket. And like I've said a million times before, when you have the wrestling advantage in a fight, that opens up the striking so much, because your opponent has to think about the takedown defense. It leaves them open to eat a bunch of strikes. So I think Ankalaev will get the better of Rakic in this fight, and I think it happens on the feet, matter of fact. And, Rakic can be chinny, so Ankalaev's going to be the pick. When you get one of these boys in Abu Dhabi, you don't pick against them. And yeah, move on to the next one. All right, now hopping into the co-main event, we have Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev, and I'm all over Khamzat Chimaev in this matchup. I definitely think he beats Robert Whittaker. Now, obviously, Whittaker looked good against Aliskerov. Now, if you guys didn't know, Khamzat actually also fought Aliskerov earlier on in his career. He also knocked him out with an uppercut as well. If I'm not mistaken, Robert Whittaker did hit Aliskerov with a nice uppercut, which is what got him basically knocked out in the first place. And yeah, Khamzat Chimaev is not Ikram Aliskerov. And Robert Whittaker knocking out Aliskerov maybe has some people confident that he can beat one of these boys, but Chimaev is not the one. Chimaev is, I think, just too good. I think he can ragdoll Whittaker, especially early. Now, the only real risk I see in this fight for Chimaev, which I think we can all agree on, is that it's a 5-round fight. And we know Chimaev's gas tank looked kind of bad against Gilbert Burns, that's for sure. Then he fought Kevin Holland round 1. That was, we didn't really see his gas tank tested there. And then Kamaru Usman, I think he hurt his shoulder in round 1. But then as that fight went on, it definitely got a bunch closer. So, interesting fight. I definitely think that the 5 rounds is kind of like a little risk when it comes to the Chimaev side, but at the end of the day, Chimaev can ragdoll Robert Whittaker early. Once again, I'll say the same thing. We're picking a lot of wrestlers this card, and when you have the wrestling advantage, the striking opens up a lot. Robert Whittaker can get chin, so Chimaev by KO is live. Chimaev by sub is live. He can definitely beat him up, especially early in this fight. The only real risk on the Chimaev side here is that this fight gets like dragged out and he fully gasses and Whittaker just fully takes over. But, I don't see that happening. I think Chimaev beats him. And yeah, I'm going to roll with Chimaev. Let's move on to the main event. All right, now for the main event, we have Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway for that featherweight strap. And, I'm getting goosebumps just breaking this fight down. This is an amazing fight. I'm actually a big Ilia Topuria fan. Funnily enough, I mean, most people in this fight are probably Max Holloway fans. And, obviously we all love Max Holloway. He's a sick guy. But I'm actually a really big Ilia Topuria fan. And I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria. And I actually think that this is the first time we see Max Holloway go to sleep in a UFC fight. I think he knocks him out. I'm super heavy on Topuria. Now, here's the thing. Max Holloway's been in some absolute wars. He's been, he got wobbled by Gaethje until, but he was obviously, really cooking Gaethje on the feet in that fight. But he did get wobbled by Gaethje. He went up to 55. Now he's coming back to his natural weight class at 145. So, a little bit of change in his body there as well. And when you get a fighter like Ilia, who's just such a talented boxer, obviously Ilia has the advantage on the ground here. Max Holloway has good takedown defense too, but if this fight does go to the ground, it's all Topuria. But I'm talking about just on the feet. Ilia is a really talented boxer. He has the speed advantage in this fight. He has the power advantage in this fight, and I actually just think that Max Holloway is gonna get caught by one of these like powerful hooks that Ilia Topuria throws, and I think he's going out. I just think that Ilia's boxing stance also is not good for Max. Max loves to work the body. If you watch his fights, he loves putting in work on the body, but Ilia has that like scrunched up, like kind of arched boxing stance where he kind of hides his body. So Max Holloway doesn't really have the body to go to there, and then when it comes to his head movement, he's quick. When it comes to his punches, his counters, he's super fast. So he's going to have the speed advantage. He's going to have the power advantage. He's going to have the advantage on the ground. I just don't see how you can pick Max in this fight. I'm all over Ilia Topuria. And as much as it hurts me to say, I think this is the first time we see Max get knocked out and, Topuria retains his belt. All right, guys, and that wraps it up for the picks and predictions for UFC 308 this weekend on October 26th. Make sure if you want to access our bet slips to go on kopicks.win. It's $20 a month to join premium. You get access to every single bet that we're placing for this card. We were up almost, I think, over 12 units in the last 4 cards. It's just an insane hit rate right now. So yeah, definitely join up if you want to check out our bet slips. And obviously, our Discord is free. It's just a community for us to chat, talk about fights, break them down, anything about UFC. So hop into the Discord. It's totally free. We have a bunch of people in there, so hop into that if you want. And yeah, check out premium on kopicks.win if that's something you're looking for. And yeah, good luck on everyone's bets this weekend.